So the dust settled after Newcastle United's transfer window. It was never going to be a quiet one, and Newcastle, got through in the end with 6 signings on board. And yeah, I mean, let's first and foremost talk about the positive side of it. Willisa coming in, and for me, that was a deal Newcastle absolutely had to make if in order to even justify Alexander Isak leaving the club. I think if they'd only assigned Nick Voltemede, then I think that would have been a huge gamble. And in the end, Newcastle, they've got the 2 strikers who can compete. And Isak was always going to go at some stage. There was nobody in my mind at Newcastle said that he was going to stay at any point of the window. Yes, they wanted the right money for him. It was always going to be that sort of transfer game with Liverpool. But in order for Newcastle to push on, that deal had to go through, and it did at £130 million. So, yeah, I mean, the deal's worth £130 million in total to Newcastle. So some of that's been spent already. Some of it will be put to one side for, future windows. And Newcastle, in the end, they've got Voltemede, they've got Willisa, they've still got William Osula. We'll come on to Will in a moment with what happened there. But ultimately, for Newcastle fans, I think they can now look at those 6 signings and feel that they've got a good squad going into the first half of the season. So yeah, I mean, I just put a quick message to get people's opinions on X. Now the dust settled, what are your views? Please also tell me below here. I'd love to see what you think. But for me, I personally look at that now. Newcastle with the 6 signings through the door: Willisa, Voltemede, Ramsey, Thiaw, Ramsdale coming in. There's those signings are going to make Newcastle stronger going forward. All the boxes were ticked in terms of the positions that needed to be filled going into the first half of the season. And for me, it's going to be about pushing for the top 5 again. Yeah, I think last season finishing 5th, in the end, Newcastle slipped from, they were in contention to finish 2nd going in the last 2 games, but they end up finishing 5th because they had that sort of stutter going into the last 2 or 3 games where they just couldn't quite get their act together in the final sort of flurry of matches. But they've done enough anyway. I mean, the Chelsea game when they won 2-0, which was the last time Newcastle won on May the 11th, was the key fixture, and that's what ultimately got them into the Champions League, just because of other results on the final day when it was looking a little bit shaky against Everton. But look, 5th place is a massive achievement, getting the Champions League, and Newcastle next year will be happy if they do that again. There'll be no worrying about finishing 2nd. If they can finish in the top 5 or 5th place again, that will be a wonderful achievement. So that for me is the first aim. The second aim will be trying to get into the Champions League playoffs. That would be a fantastic achievement in the first sort of year in this new format. Maybe they can go beyond it. Maybe they can finish as one of the top 8 qualifiers. I think they'd have to have some run in order to do that. But yeah, for me, getting a playoff slot would be a big boost going into spring, and it would just keep Newcastle's hand in on that competition as well. Obviously the domestic cups as well. Newcastle defending the Carabao Cup this year. That's still a big competition for me. Still a competition I know that Eddie Howe will be taken seriously. He has made that very clear. Last year he played his strongest teams all the way through. Kicks off with a home tie against Bradford City in round 3, which gives Newcastle the big opportunity to get in the last 16. And when you bear in mind the Carabao Cup, the quarterfinals for that competition are in sort of mid-December, you could have one foot in, close to a Wembley final again before the turn of the year. If you set up like last year, going into that two-legged semi-final, then it's just a great feeling, because the one door to winning a competition is open, and Newcastle know what it's all about now. Having lifted that trophy last year, they'll be desperate to do it again. Then, you know, the FA Cup, always a one that's high on Eddie Howe's wish list. Knocked out by Brighton in round 5 last year. That was quite disappointing, considering it was so close to a result for Newcastle on the day. But yeah, you kind of complain with how the season ended. So for me, yeah, top 5, Champions League playoff, and then a push at one of the cups. We don't ask for much, do we? But that would be, for me, reflective of how good this team can be. And I'm looking forward to it all settling down now. You know, Newcastle go into that game against Wolves with potentially a few debuts being handed out. It's going to be jumping, that game against Wolverhampton Wanderers. I think, for me, Newcastle, you know, you look at the league table, we're talking about finishing 5th here. Newcastle have only got 2 points on the board, but it is still early. There's still factors around the situation for me, which, you know, 2 points, 2 clean sheets on the road in that home defeat against Liverpool, affected by what was going on with Isak, definitely the Liverpool game, and, you know, no firepower in the 2 away games. So now that can change. The page can be turned and they move on. Nice sort of link there to the Leeds game. It was William Osula who, you know, went in to lead the line, and, you know, had a couple of opportunities in the first half, sort of disappeared pretty much in the second half, and then, you know, on deadline day, could have left the club, was very close to leaving the club. I looked at that and think Newcastle pretty much sanctioned his exit, but for William Osula, you know, the move had to be right. And I'm just looking now at, you know, the reaction of Frankfurt, who've actually been very vocal about it, saying that, you know, the loan fee was something like 4.3 million. That was deemed as steep by them. And then, you know, an obligation which they felt that, you know, was thrown in at the last minute. That this is coming from the Frankfurt side. So yeah, it was one where I think Newcastle were pretty much trying to cash in on William Osula on deadline day. In the end, you know, the word from Newcastle was he stays because they need the extra cover, and that is very much true for Wissa and Voltemade, that they will need someone to come in and cover. But it just feels like for William Osula, the decision's kind of was already made that he could have left. And, you know, there's talk today in the papers in Germany that Frankfurt will go again for Osula in the next window. So his agent will now probably be looking at all the options. I mean, Leverkusen were linked, Aston Villa were linked. So it looks like there is a lot of interest if the price can be so determined on William Osula. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, let me know again. There's a lot of people who will feel Osula is a player that could give Newcastle value. I mean, certainly that game against Liverpool, he came off the bench, scored. Last season scored against Ipswich, got one in the FA Cup against Bromley. But I think for me, it's kind of like, this is a player who needs regular football. A loan would have been absolutely perfect for him, to go away, play a regular run of games, get double figures, and then come back and push for the next half of his career in Newcastle. Would have been absolutely fantastic. But yeah, it looks like a decision may have been made. Maybe that will jay him up, might galvanise him going into the last the first half of the season. But yeah, Newcastle fans now just pretty much glad the window's, you know, behind them. Let's just have a look at some of the comments that we've got. I mean, someone joking today that you know, let's just stay clear of the relegation zone, which Newcastle, you know, sitting 4th bottom at the minute. But for me, yeah, very early doors. I don't read too much in the first 3 games. At one stage in time, the league table didn't even get published until, you know, 4 or 5 games in. So yeah, let's not be too worried. But, you know, people talking about, here's one from Jacob saying Carabao Cup again, silverware is important, but a good run in the Champions League can finance some new players next year. So yeah, potentially getting 2 if you could get to the last 8, last 4 of the competition, we know how valuable that is. People talking top 4 again. FA Cup, Chris tells me, would be phenomenal, and trying to get through to the Champions League game, which is my first ambition, would be right up there for a lot of people. Some people saying top 6. Ultimately, the battle is going to be between Liverpool, Arsenal, Man City, Chelsea, Aston Villa, Nottingham Forest, Tottenham perhaps. We'll have to wait and see on those teams. But yeah, it's going to be another really great season. And for me, as I say, Champions League just seems to be the bread and butter now. That's the benchmark for Newcastle, and they've got to kind of live up to it. So yeah, thanks for watching. Again, drop me your message below and we'll see where you think. Tell me where you think Newcastle will finish or where you think they should finish in the next few months. But the window now is closed. As I say, there was the situation with William Osula, so there's going to be players battling for places. I mean, Champions League squad as well announced. Jamal Lascelles not in that roster for the group games, so that's just shows you what sort of strength and depth Newcastle are going to have. But yeah, it's going to be a really exciting season. That first Champions League away trip in Brussels coming up for Newcastle. It's going to be really great to see the fans back on the road. But ultimately now, the dust settles out a little bit in the international window, and then by next week we're all getting excited again for that game against Wolves. So yeah, we'll be there for that one. So please continue to watch on Chronicle Live. Thanks for watching again today. Drop me your comments below, and yeah, we'll get back to you.